That is what we see. Yahweh is always providing an escape hatch, a protection for at least a remnant of his people. Can we agree on that? There always seems to be, no matter what bad thing is happening, there's always a remnant or a provision that God has for his people so they don't disappear from the earth. I mean, people have been trying to wipe out Israel for thousands of years, and they're still with us. And they're still going to be with us, and we are with them, and they are with us. We are Israel together, and we're not going anywhere because we're in the end of the story too. So we have to stay all through the story. Let's continue. I propose to you that the story of Joseph can be summed up here also in the very well-known Ezekiel 37:16 through 19. Okay, Joseph is separated from his brothers and reunited to his brothers. The two houses of Israel are separated and reunited. Let's read it here. And you, son of man, take for yourself one stick. Well, I'm not going to read it. You all know this story. I'm not going to read this because you all know this. And there's other things that we should spend time on. My real goal is actually to finish before I get red lighted. That's what, whether y'all get it or not, that's really irrelevant. I want to finish before I get red lighted. No, just seriously. But I'm not going to read this. I mean, everybody knows this. But let's make some, I know when you mentioned the two houses, you get all these different ideas, right? But let's go this. Let's agree from Ezekiel 37 that there are two houses of Israel, because Ezekiel 37 says there are. Let's agree that they will be reunited by Yahweh. Okay? And let's agree that we are some part of them if we're in Messiah. Whether you think you're in Ephraim or Judah or whatever, I don't want to get into that. But we're that. Can we agree on those 3 points? Okay, then we can move on from that because this also is not what I want to talk about directly. The prophecy of the story of Joseph is about the restoration of both houses of Israel. That's what I propose to you is the main crux of the story of Joseph, is a type and shadow of what was going to come. Okay? Now, that is the basis for what I'm about to present. Okay, this is all background. We haven't got to the teaching yet. This is all background. I need to also give you some more background, a brief history of the Sephardic people. Who here does not know what Sephardic means? Any idea what is a Sephardic person? Okay. This teaching will be coming primarily from a book by a good friend of mine, Rabbi Conrado Umania, who wrote this book, and most of the information presented will be coming directly from his text with his permission, even though he's not here and he wouldn't know if I was presenting it or not, but I do have his permission to present. The history of the Sephardic. The Sephardic, there's a prophecy in Obadiah 1:20. That says, in the captivity of this host of the children of Israel shall possess that of the Canaanites, even unto Zarephath. And the captivity of Jerusalem, which is in Sepharad, shall possess the cities of the south. The cities of the south is the Negev. You may hear frequently the term Sephardic related to the Negev, because this prophecy says the Sephardic will inherit the Negev, the southern portion of Israel. Excuse me. The Sephardic, by the way, Sepharad is the Hebrew word for the Iberian Peninsula, for Spain. Okay, just to give that to you. That's where it comes from. It's for the Iberian Peninsula. The first migration out of Israel was not a forced, it was a migration. It wasn't an expulsion. They weren't running away from anything. They were running to something. During the time of King Solomon, during his reign, King Solomon, he conquered pretty much the whole known world. He was a pretty well-traveled guy. I mean, he had people everywhere. There were 3 major migrations out of Eretz Israel for the purpose of commerce. They were going out to be on the shipping end of things coming into Israel. The first one went to Yemen. the second one to Ethiopia, and the third to the Iberian Peninsula and Spain. These communities later multiplied in size during the time of the exile to Assyria and Babylon. Now, these people, when they went to these pre-existing communities, they went there to escape, of course, the Assyrian captivity and the Babylonian captivity. Now, here's a scripture verse for you in 1 Kings 5:6. Now, therefore, command that they cut for me cedars, from Lebanon, which is also called Phoenicia, and my servants will be with your servants, and I will give you wages and your servants according to all that you say, for you know that there is no one among us who knows how to cut timber like these Sidonians. If you look on the map up there about where it says Provin, there is, oh, thank you. Very kind. There is Phoenicia, and you see Tyre there off on the coast, and this is Lebanon. Modern-day Lebanon was Phoenicia, and there was an accord between Solomon and the king there in Phoenicia to cut cedars for not only the temple, but also the many palaces that Solomon built. So there was a friendship going on there. Now, the Phoenician trade route, so then, of course, obviously, we're going to be focusing not on Yemen and not on Ethiopia, but we're going to be focusing on Sepharad, okay, on Spain. The Phoenician trade route stretched all the way to the Iberian Peninsula and beyond. They were phenomenal at shipbuilding and sea travel. And so simply what happened is the Israelites under Solomon, remember this is before the division of the two houses, now we have just unified Israel, they all got a ride on the boats, and they went there and they established a community because they were sending a lot of goods back from Spain or the Iberian Peninsula to Jerusalem. And so they were over there making money in that way, okay? They were establishing community on the shipping end. Of course, during the Assyrian and Babylonian times, they were fleeing, and the community began to get quite large in Spain, and can still be seen, the remnant of that there today. There was a major exodus during the 4th and 3rd centuries BCE, while the Greeks occupied much of Eretz Israel, and the people now known as Jews, because now we've had the separation. Why were they known as Jews? Because it was just, they called the nation Judah. They got that name in Babylon. They started calling them Jews because most of Judah was exiled to Babylon. So now known as Jews, migrated to the already established communities in the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, called Sepharad in Hebrew. The people became known as Sephardic Jews. Okay? Now, that's where the name comes from. So all of you now know why, or who are the Sephardic Jews, and where did they come from? The majority of the Sephardic Jewish influence is from the southern kingdom of Judah. Even though under Solomon, it is very clear, historically speaking, that all of the tribes could have been involved in the Exodus. I mean, it wasn't just Judah that went there. But they're called Jews because the major buildup of the communities happened because they were fleeing Babylon, they were fleeing the Greeks. Okay? Most of the architecture and things that we find in Spain come from around the time of the 1st century BCE or the 1st century AD, or excuse me, Common Era, CE. If I say something backwards, it's because I'm remembering it in Spanish, and then I'm speaking it in English. Okay, let's move on. There were other migrations during that time. It wasn't just to these three places, because we see that during the same time, many Jews went into Asia Minor and populated all the way to North Europe. These became known as the Ashkenazi Jews. That's actually my heritage. My heritage can be traced back to northern, my mother's side from Germany, and there's many indicators in our family tree that there could be some Jewish background. I have proved nothing, and it means nothing other than it was interesting to uncover that there could be that in my background. But that appears to be where I've come from, which explains the weird way in which I pronounce Hebrew. But let's moving forward. In Sepharad, now let's go back to Spain.